Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Tim Corpus, and today we're going to talk about Dorico. This is part 6 of the Dorico tutorial series. If you haven't seen the first 5, go check those out. They're full of information. So here are a few ideas in Dorico for you. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, and you can also become a member and support the channel. So let's jump in. Previously, we exported an audio file, but now we want a PDF. If we go up here to our print mode, we can see we have access to our various different layouts. And each one is showing the music that we'll see when we print. So over here on the right-hand side, we can choose a printer, and then from this drop menu below, we can choose which printer we want to send to. Or if we just want a PDF, we can actually go over here to graphics and then choose PDF. There's also these image files in case we want to export an image file. Now, whatever layout you have selected from this left-hand side, and what's showing here is what will be exported. So if we want a PDF of the soprano part, we'll go to graphics and we can choose color or monochrome, and then our destination folder. So this, just like with an audio file, is where the PDF will be saved. If you want to change the location, you can hit these 3 dots and now select a new folder for where your file will be saved. If you're exporting several files, perhaps we want to send out the soprano, the viola, and the piano. While holding Shift, we can select the viola part and the piano part. We now have 3 parts selected, and we could export all of these. Perhaps we want to make sure there's a special naming for each part. If we go to File Options, File Name Options, this gives us a new menu to choose the name for all of the files. This isn't as necessary when you're only exporting a few parts, but if you have a full orchestra and you're exporting lots of parts, it's helpful to be organized. So this is helping show what we're going to get in the name of our file. This is the example of what our file is currently named, and it is using N, which is the layout number 01, and then space, dash, and then this $L is the layout name, full score, and that is the name of the layout, and then space, dash, space, and we have project title right here, Tim's project.pdf. If you wanted to change anything about this, perhaps you want the default separator not to be space dash space, you want it to just be underscore, you could change that. We could also change the recipe, and perhaps we want to also add the date. Without typing the date, all we have to do is space, underscore, and we can put $D. And that's all we have to do. We could press OK, and now each one of the files as they're exported will use that naming system. On this page, we currently have 2 measures per system. Perhaps we want 3. If we were to go to engrave mode, we could then select this measure, measure 9, which we want to go up here, select anything in here, and then up top, we'll select move to previous system. And now we have 3 measures up here and 2 measures down here. So to move a third over here, we could select over here anything in measure 12 and then move to previous system. And we now have 3 measures in system 1 and 3 measures in system 2. But there's also a different way that we can force this across all of the music if perhaps we want 3 measures in every system. I'm going to undo this. And what we can do is go to Library, Layout Options, and here in our layout options, we're going to look at how we can space things differently. Under staves and systems, let's scroll all the way down to casting off. Here we can choose a fixed number of bars or measures per system. We could also choose a fixed number of systems per frame or page. So let's check this box, and we're going to set this to 3 bars per system. We are currently saving this in full score in that layout. Let's hit apply and close, and we can see that on every page we're having 3 measures per system. Here in the piece, I want to move this piano part, measures 10 and 11, to show up the octave with something like an 8 VA. There's a few ways we could do this. We could select all of this and go Shift plus C and then the number 8. Now you can see it's added the 8 VA and moved our music down the octave. So if we really wanted it 2 octaves above this, showing from where we were before, we could select all this and move it up the octave. And now, of course, it'll sound 1 octave above this. Another way we could do that is we could select our measures over here. And then on the top right, where we have the clefs menu, we could select from the octave lines section. So we could do an 8VB to move it down an octave. We could do 15A and even 22. So here in our piano part, measures 4 and 5, we want to add some piano pedal markings. And there's a whole menu we could look at for this. And this is over here on the right-hand side where we have our playing techniques. Now, if we scroll down, we have an option for keyboard. And if we open that menu up, we can see all sorts of different options. So if we want to put in a legato pedal, we could select a section here. And perhaps we want this, actually let's take this whole measure here. And we'll just go ahead and click here. And then it's added it in. If we wanted to show something more specific, we could select an area, maybe this, and then we could add our markings over here. And you can see it's added it right where we started that section. Here in measure 17, I want to add some accidentals to our notes here. So if I wanted this C sharp to be a C natural, I could select it, go over here to the side menu, and hit the natural sign. I could also select the menu and just hit 0. And now it's gone to a natural. I could also change this D to a D flat by hitting the minus sign or the dash sign on my typing keyboard. And then if I wanted this C, again, to be a C sharp, I could just hit the plus on my typing keyboard. Now it's currently not showing a sharp because we are in a key where C is sharp. But if we want to show it, we just hit that plus and now it'll show the sharp. If we hover our mouse over here on the left, we can see the hotkeys for each one of these little buttons, which, like I said, 0 for natural, dash or minus is a flat, and the plus or equals is a sharp. I've added an alto, tenor, and bass singer to make this more of a choral piece. I've also added some notes for the bass singer, and I want to take the text from the soprano and add it down here, but I don't want to change the notes. So what I'm going to do is select this measure. Holding Shift, I'll select the second measure, and now I'm going to right-click and use the filter, and then I'm going to filter all lyrics. I now have only the lyrics selected. I'm going to do Control C for copy, and now I'm going to select the beginning of the selection where I want to paste the text. So Control V, I've now pasted in the text without pasting in the notes. So I get to keep my notes for the bass, and I get to keep my notes separate for the soprano. So Dorico recently came out with an update earlier on this month Dorico 5.1.60. And with this update, you'll be able to add some new features. So what you want to do is go to this blog and you can learn more about the update. But in order to update, you're going to need the Steinberg Download Assistant. Now, if you already have Dorico on your computer, you probably already have the Download Assistant. So if you're on a Mac, you can use the applications, or if you're in Windows, you could use the Start menu and search for the Steinberg Download Assistant. This is what it looks like. And as you can see, I have some other software as well, but you would go to Updates and then Applications. And then this is an error about a different software called WaveLab. But for you Dorico folks, you would have Dorico 5.1.60 update right here, and you would just go ahead and install that. Now, you will have to have Dorico closed to do any installation, and you may have to restart your system, so be sure to be prepared for that. Here in my music, I've got a chord in the piano, and I'd like that chord to actually be with the soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. So I could just double-click in and type my music like normal, all the way down through the bass, or I could do something called Explode Music. So I'm going to select this chord here and then copy it, Control-C, and now I'm going to click, drag, and select the 4 measures of the 4 systems or 4 instruments I want: soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. I'm now going to right-click, and under Paste Special, I could explode music. And here you see it's copied the music from the piano and it's pasted it in order going from top to bottom. Now, if I want to take these notes from my soprano, alto, tenor, and bass and put them into a chord in the piano, I could use something called Reduce Music. But this is a pretty big chord with a high G in the soprano and a low D in the bass. So this doesn't make sense to put in just the right hand of the piano. So I'm going to click and drag, selecting all of the notes of the soprano, alto, tenor, and bass, and I'm going to Control-C copy. I'm now going to select both of the right hand and left hand of the piano, and now I can right-click in here, Paste Special, Reduce. And you can see it's taken the notes in order and pasted them within staves. We have the bass, tenor, alto, and soprano pasted right into the piano part. If in your piece, or in this piece here, we're hearing too much of one of the instruments because of the balance, we can edit that in play mode. So we'll go up here to the top left and go into play mode, and here at the bottom, we have a mixer. So this view, it kind of looks like piano roll. It's a MIDI view where we can see all the notes that we've input into the piece, as well as the measures, and we can also play from here as well. So down here is our mixer. And if you find, like perhaps this did happen in Finale as well, that one instrument, the VST, or the virtual sound, is a little bit louder than it would be naturally in real life, you could just turn it down. So let's go ahead and turn the soprano down a little bit, and you can see this number here correlates to its volume. So we'll go ahead and turn that down a little bit, and we could turn this up if we wanted to. Each one of these is related to our instruments. We also have reverb that's input into the system, and that's going to affect quite a few different instruments. So if it's sounding a little bit foggy or mushy, like there's too much of a big room, you could also turn this down. And then over here on the far right, this is your master output. So if you want to turn everything up or everything down, this is where you could do that. Because oftentimes, and we did see this in Finale as well, when you do a MIDI playback, it can be very quiet. So this is a space where you can edit that volume. If you want to listen back to just one instrument at a time, there's a few different ways you could do that. Here in play mode, we could just go down here to our piano, and we could hit the S or solo, and then it's going to automatically mute everything else, so we only hear the piano part. We hit the S to turn that off, or we could also go the other way around and we could just mute our viola, so now we can hear piano and soprano. You can impact them on this view or down here in the mixer. Another way you could hear just one instrument at a time is in write mode. So we'll go to write mode, and then perhaps we want to hear just the piano. So where normally we could just click into the measure and press P to get playback, if we want to hear just one staff or one instrument, what we can do is just select those notes, and it doesn't have to be all of their notes, just notes that are only within the systems that you want to hear. And now when you hit play, you'll only hear those notes. And it'll go on from the beginning to the end of the flow, or from wherever you're starting, and it'll play only those notes in that system. If you want to select all of the notes within one staff, there's a few ways you could do that. You could select the beginning of the measure and then scroll over to the end, holding Shift, select the end, and it will have selected everything inside. Another way you could do that is just to select the first measure or rest or note, go up to Edit, and then select to either the end of the system, which would be right here, or the end of the flow, which would currently be the end of this movement or piece. And now, instead of having to scroll all the way to the end to select, you've got everything selected within your staff. If you want to find some information about previous pieces you've written or the piece that you're currently working on, you can head up to File, and then Open Recent will show all of the recent files that you've opened. As you can see, I've had quite a few. You could also clear this menu if you want to start over. But there's also project statistics. And if you open this, you'll see all sorts of information about the project that you have open. And you could also hit this drop down and go between flows. So this will show you all of the instruments, the measures, the duration, and all sorts of details about all of the different parts of the music you have in here. Everything from dynamics to the number of key signatures. All of this could be helpful, and if you want this in more detail, you can export a plain text file to your folders. In this piece, we have the piano, and it's a little bit too close to the other instruments. We can see here in measure 7, it's just not visually friendly. So we want a little bit more space between these two. In Finale, we would have to drag this a little bit further down, and we could do that here in Engrave mode under the staff spacing. But there's actually a better way to do this globally. So we're going to go to Library and then Layout Options, and then under Vertical Spacing is where we're going to make that choice. And we want to make sure that the layout that we're dealing with is full score, because if we were to use just the piano, we would only be impacting the piano part, and that would only be seen if we were printing that piano part. So we want to deal with the full score. Now these options here will determine the space between all sorts of different staff. So you could go staff to staff like this. You could go from a group staff to another staff. Like here, we have a group with our soprano, alto, tenor, and bass, and then our viola. You could change the other direction from staff to staff group. You could also change how big of a space you want within a braced staff, like this, a piano. So if we wanted more space between the right hand and the left hand, we could deal with this. But what I want to deal with is staff group to staff group. So with these, oftentimes, it's a little bit of a trial and error, depending on the instruments you have, the spacing that you need, and your page size. So there is no silver bullet to solve this type of situation. You kind of have to determine what spacing you want. So from here, I'm going to put this up to 12 just to show something drastic. And I'm also going to increase the amount of space between the right hand and the left hand. I'll set this one to 10 so we can clearly see that. I hit apply, and here you can see we have more space in between our right hand and left hand. If we look over here, we don't have more space between these two. So that would mean we need to select a different option within our choices here. So we just changed our staff group to staff group, but let's change our staff group to staff as well as our staff to staff group. And now hit apply, and we can see we have more space here. So it's under this section in vertical spacing that you will make those decisions to space out your staff equally between all of your different instruments. Thanks so much for checking out this video. Hopefully you learned something, and you can like this video, subscribe to the channel, consider becoming a member and supporting what we're doing here on the channel, and I'll see you next time.